Good afternoon, and welcome to this session of Wilmington City Council's Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting. My name is Bud Friel, and I'll be hosting the meeting today. This is a little different than the previous budget hearings we had, in the fact that we have three pieces of legislation that we have to address first. I wanted to mention that I'm being joined by fellow council members, President Hanifa Shabazz, Councilmember Linda Gray, and Councilmember Cyril Adams, and they are both, and Councilmember Chris Johnson, and they are all members of the Finance Committee. So we're going to jump right into the legislation. I'm going to alert council members that we only have about 15 minutes for each piece. So if you do want to make comments, you'll have to keep them to 2 minutes, and you'll get to comment once. Or we'll try to get to the public and then vote. It is my hope that we will vote all three of these pieces out of committee, and then let the council have a bigger debate on the issues when they meet on May 7th. All right, we've also been joined by Cynthia Oliver, who's also a member of the Finance Committee. All right, the first piece is ordinance number 20018, establishing salaries of city council members for the 188th council session to be effective as of January 5th, 2021. It is our responsibility every 4 years to set the salaries for the next council. Dating back to the mid to late 1980s, the process that we followed has been that the salaries would be increased by anything that the employees had received for the 4 previous years. So in that case, there has been a 3% increase over 2 years. So the salary, I already said it. So the salary increase for the next council would be a 3% increase. The impact in fiscal year 21 would be about 6,600. For a calendar year, it would be just over 13,000. So that's the process we've followed for years. We are required by code to have this done in the first 6 months of this year. It cannot be done in the last 6 months. So that's why we're moving forward with it at this time. Does council members have any questions? Mr. Johnson?
Hi, good afternoon. I would like to make a friendly amendment to this ordinance. I believe I've spoken about this previously. Obviously, given the financial situation in the city right now, I know we're required to do this by code, but I believe the timing is not great. So with that, I would like to make the amendment wherever it says 2021, we amend that to say 2022 on throughout the ordinance. And at that point, by January 2022, we should be in a better situation. And then at that point, again, individual council members can accept or decline the salary adjustment.
Just let me clarify. So in the title, it would read January 4th, 2022. In the fourth whereas, it would read January 4th, 2022. In the fifth whereas, January 2022. In section 3, there are 2 pieces that would say January 4th, 2022, and in the synopsis, it would say January 4th, 2022. I will second that motion. Second that motion. On the question, Ms. Oliver, did you have a question?
I was going to second it myself, so moved.
Okay. Is there, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, now we're back to the original amendment. Are there any other questions or comments on the original ordinance to set the salaries for the next council coming in next year?
Councilman, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry.
Who's that? President? Is that President Shabazz?
Yes.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just would like to just add to the comments in that that moved it to the 22nd or to year 2022. Even at that time, members of council have the ability at that time to either vote to accept it or not. And even the council members, even in this term as well as other terms, who have offered to forego their salaries and increases, those type of things can be taken into consideration. So I think moving to 22 gives us an opportunity to see economically how we fare, and also to take considerations the needs of members of council as well. So I make a motion to move to, what am I trying to do?
It's already been done.
No, not to accept it.
It's already been moved and seconded. The amendment was already moved and seconded. At this point, I'm going to turn to the public to see if there's any comments from the public. I'm not seeing any hands raised, so I'm going to go back to council. All those in favor of ordinance number 20-018 as amended, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed? Okay. This will be on the agenda Thursday, May 7th. The next ordinance number 20-019, amendment chapter 2 of the city code in order to authorize the city treasurer to access the budget reserve account funds for fiscal year 2020 and require replenishment of the budget reserve account funds in the ensuing fiscal year. Is Mr. Guy with us? 1 second.
Hello?
Is Mr. Guy with us? Mr.
Hello,
Guy,
can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah.
You have your ordinance up.
Yeah, this here is just the annual ordinance that we normally process to address the budget reserve. Nothing new to it. Same one we've done each year.
Mr. Guy, being that we're in the situation we're in with the COVID-19 crisis, I would like to add, I hope it can be considered a friendly amendment at the end of the paragraph where it says October 1st, 2020. I'd like to add the language, in addition to the day the city treasurer draws down the funds, the city treasurer shall notify all members of city council in writing by email the amount of the drawdown, the purpose of the drawdown, and the date of the drawdown. Could I have a second?
Second.
Moved and second on the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Is there anything else, Mr. Guy? You want me to?
That's it.
All right, let me just check to see if there's any public comments. Ms. McDermott, did you have a comment before we vote? Hello? Is your mic on?
Must have stepped away.
Ms. McDermott, is your mic on? Did you want to speak?
He must have stepped away. She's been on.
Councilman Friel,
Yeah, I'm here.
this is,
Are you
This
speaking for
is-
Ms. McDermott?
yeah, this is Velda.
Yes, go ahead.
I think Mary McDermott, she's having some technical difficulties, so she may be trying to log back in.
Okay, go ahead.
But what I would like to add and have members of council consider is, as Councilman Guy said, this typically is a standard routine, and we typically don't have the need to access those funds, although we annually have made it a routine to obtain the authorization to allow us to manage through cyclical and seasonal declines in the revenues. However, in light of what the last several weeks have presented, and recognizing that the effects of this may extend beyond the June 30th date, which the ordinance currently reflects, I would ask council and the sponsor to consider amending the ordinance to permit access to the budget reserve through June of 2021. The greater likelihood is that the need to access the budget reserve funds will present itself sometime after June 30th of 2020, which the ordinance would currently allow.
Wow,
I'm confused.
that's a whole nother year, you're saying.
Mhm. Well, another alternative then, though, is to, frankly, is that we would be looking to come right back to council July 1st with another ordinance, because given the level of uncertainty of when the need to access the reserves may present itself, it would be prudent to have it in place during the time period of that uncertainty. Typically, we know the time of year that cyclically we see a decline in revenues. And so we customarily make the request as we're approaching that window of time. Currently, that window is likely to last over a more extended period of time. And
Okay, let me go ahead and get some additional comments here. So your request is the June 30th, 2021. Am I hearing that right?
or some period of time
Other than 1 month.
beyond June 30th of 2020, because that will only cover essentially the next 60 days. And
Okay.
and did you follow me?
Yeah, I got you.
Mhm.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and get some other comments here. As I stated, we don't have a lot of time to work on these ordinances. So let me get some comments and see what we can do here. Mr. Johnson, do you have your hand up?
Yes, yes. I certainly I would thank Treasurer Potter Jones for the input. I do I do see somewhat of a legal problem. And again, I'm not the prime sponsor, but I believe we can't extend this past the 107th City Council. So I would say December 31st, 2020 certainly would be fine. And then I think next council by law would have to restart that. I mean, because it would technically it's a new council, you know, there's a new treasurer's office installment. So all of that I think needs to play out. So I have no problem. I think December 31st makes sense, but I don't think legally we can actually do until June 2021.
At the beginning of the meeting, I'm asking all council members to keep their comments to 2 minutes so that we get everything done in this hour that we have set aside. Next up is Mr. Adams.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Friel. I believe the treasurer makes a good point also. However, I think the period should be extended to September 30th and let her come in each quarter based on needs. I realize we're probably going to have to redo the budget come the end of September 30th also. So I think that we'd have a better read on everything when 3-month intervals. I do say that her point is very well taken, though, especially since we extended tax filings on out to July 15th, so she could very well actually run out of cash this time around. But I think having her do it on a quarterly basis, since we do size everything up on a quarter, and I know finance also reconciles quarterly also. So I would like to change her suggestion to September 30th. If the city treasurer doesn't have any hesitation about that, and allow her to come back in each quarter with an additional request and modification accordingly.
Okay, Mr. Guy?
Yes, what I'd like to do is make sure everybody gets a chance to weigh in. And then I'm interested in hearing what the treasurer recommends after hearing the various thoughts.
Okay.
And then I'll come back to you as a sponsor.
Okay, Ms. Washington? Do you want to
Yeah.
address this concern?
Yes. As I read the ordinance, it looks like the budget reserve drawdown reflects FY20 budget to be replenished in October. So I think that there will need to be an amendment to actually reflect FY21 as well. So that's why I have a little hesitation about accepting it now. I think that we could actually revisit this again. And if we need to draw down the budget reserve, we need to extend that period of time where it reflects the FY21 budget. We should introduce another piece of legislation to say that. But as I read this ordinance, it reflects the FY21 expenditure drawdown.
Okay, Ms. Oliver? Ms. Oliver, are you with us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say, I heard Treasurer Velda, I told the Treasurer, say, we just have to revisit it, and I'm willing to revisit it in September or December.
Okay. Okay, President Shabazz?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I think taking all the points that's been shared today into consideration, I do think that to stay with compliance with the law, also with our financial income schedule and the uncertainties, I too agree that, maybe on a quarterly basis or coming back to revisit it to see exactly where we are since there's so many uncertainties would be most prudent, so that we are doing things that we know with whatever minor information we can get as time goes on, that we are doing things that are fiscally responsible and feasible. So, I agree. I would agree with coming back to revisit the legislation and extending it as needed.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Adams, this will be your last time to speak on this bill.
Yes, I understand that, Mr. Field. Thank you. Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we address the treasurer's concern by saying that we can extend this to September 30th and allow her to come back in on a quarterly basis for this. Again,
Second.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to be a little more specific with your motion, because if you
Okay.
let me just finish real quick, Mr. Adams. You read the ordinance, it talks strictly about the fiscal year 2020 budget.
I understand that, but the treasurer is quite on point. If we extended tax filings till July 15th, that's in 2021's budget, and she wouldn't have collected all her tax payments that she expected to collect in 2020.
No,
So
no.
in this particular instance,
Let me just clarify something. We normally do this because our tax revenues come in August. Our property tax revenues come in August.
yes,
And we find the crunch usually in the end of the fiscal year. So we give the treasurer until the tax receipts come in August, and then we go ahead and pay it back August 1st.
yes,
So-
but we get a big payday through net profits tax and city wage tax and things like that on April 15th that she's not going to be able to collect now until July 15th. And so I think the treasurer's right on with this. I don't like the part where we go out a year and a half, but I certainly don't mind the treasurer coming in on a quarterly basis, especially considering the financial circumstances due to the pandemic. And so I'd like to extend this out to September 30th. And however, the ordinance can be written so that she has whatever borrowing authority she needs through September 30th. and that she can report back to the mayor and the finance chair whenever she does the drawdown. So whatever language is necessary, sir.
All right. Let's see what we got next up here.
Yeah, we have a second on that motion, I know.
Well, we're gonna have to, I'm trying to work on the wording of it. Mr. Adams, I'll get back to you. Because we're gonna have to do more than just say September 30th.
Right.
I'm trying to read the language here in the ordinance and mark it
Okay, so why don't I make the motion to, for September 30th again, and, you know, and we can vote.
All right, let me go through what I think we have. If this is
Okay.
okay for you. In the third line, in the first whereas, it would read July 1st, 2019 to September 30th, 2020. Then in section 2-376 under C, it would have to say, you would have to add account funds shall be pertain to fiscal year 2020 and 2021. And then you'd have to add that at the other two lines. And at the end, I was going to suggest that it be replenished by December 1st, 2020. That way, if you find yourself in October that you're going to be accessing it again, we can go ahead, council come back and amend this ordinance and do it in the next calendar year. Does that address what you're trying to do, Mr. Adams?
Yes, that would give her a 2-month period of October and November in order to fund the shortage then, right? So, and
Or come back down.
yeah, I would be okay with those changes. Certainly, I'd like the treasurer to weigh in if she'd be okay with that too, and I think we could go forward with that.
President Shabazz?
On the question of it, in your language, I was trying to follow along with you, Councilman Phil, in reference to including the year 21, because does the language speaks to the 2020 budget? Does that include us going down into, because we'll be in the 2021 budget when the September date comes and October date comes around. So does that give?
That's
why I was saying 2020 and fiscal year 2020.
Okay, that's right. I would just wanted to be clear that I didn't hear that.
Okay.
I'm sorry, who's next?
I just had a
Mr.
question.
Guy, do you want to wait or do you want to talk?
I wanted to, I held up last time because I wanted to make sure that the treasurer had a chance to hear everybody's thoughts. And I wanted to hear from her one more time as to how she considers all those thoughts. And I am gonna make a brief comment before that. And
Okay.
what it seems to me is that we're all comfortable year after year with this as written. So I don't think there's a big issue as written, but it does, everybody's comments to some extent reflect that we may need to come back to this as we learn more information. And so it might be the easiest thing to do is to get the authority right now as we do annually. And we can go ahead and get a rough draft of what we may need in the future and get that in the pipeline and just sit on that until later on when the treasurer gets back to us and tells us, okay, I need another one of these to give me a greater time period to operate with. So those were my thoughts, but I'd like to hear, once everybody makes their comments, I see the mayor's chief of staff has her hand up.
Well,
Would
if
like to
I
hear
if
I don't
from
want
I
the
can
to,
weigh in, I think
Guy, I don't want to shock you, but I agree with you 100%.
You're not shocked.
Let me go ahead and go to Ms. Washington, and then we'll go back to our city treasurer. I think she's there.
I'm here. I'm back here. I just had a question on whether we can actually enact any legislation regarding FY21 when it's not even passed yet. That was my only
Yeah, that's my
question.
concern too. That's why I think Mr. Guy's suggestion is a good one.
Okay.
All right,
That's my point.
City Treasurer, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Did you hear all those comments?
I did, and I appreciate all of the input, and I agree. I wanted to make sure that we were considering the and to alert council to what's different about the request this time, and the extended time over which this uncertainty is going to last, which may, different from historically require the access at some point in time further out. But I am totally comfortable with the recommendation of Councilman Guy, and that we put in place the ordinance as is now and then come back. So that's fine. My primary goal was to make sure that that council is alerted and that we're all poised to take whatever actions necessary in light of the ongoing uncertainty.
Well, City Treasurer, you know probably from my recent email that I agree. I think this isn't going to be something that's going to be over in a couple of months.
Mhm.
It could be a couple of years before we know all the impacts from how people work and wage tax and things like that. So,
Mhm.
if there's no other comments this time, can I just go ahead to the public and see if there's any additional public comment? That's all right. I don't see any. Mr. Guy, is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Well, I think we're on Mr. Adams' motion to amend.
Well, I just went through some language and it was never seconded or anything like that. So we're back to the original ordinance with the notification piece that was put in there.
Excuse me, Mr. Phil, I did have a motion contingent on a language, so certainly if I agree with your language, we'd have to vote on the motion. And so I'll make the
Well,
motion
who's
again. I'll
second?
make the
Who's
motion
second?
based on the language that you modified,
All
saying
right.
21 and October 1 and December 1.
Okay, sir. Okay.
I second Mr. Adams' modified as noted amendment.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Once again, this has to be just finance committee members. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? I'm a no.
No.
3 ayes and 2 noes.
Well,
Let me
All
just
right.
ask, what are we saying no to or yes to?
So to Mr. Adams' motion to extend it to September 30th and December 1. All right. So
Isn't,
And I thought it was understood
did you vote? Wait. I'm still trying to sort out the vote. Did you vote, Ms. Gray?
no, I have not voted yet.
Do you want to vote?
Yes, I would like to vote, but I'm trying to find out because you said you agreed with Guy's suggestion. So is that the one we're discussing or we're discussing?
No, we're discussing Mr. Adams' amendment.
And how does that differ?
Mr. Guy was leaving it as is, basically with the June 30th date.
You come back.
Mr. Adams wants to change it, extend it out to September 30th.
But Mr. Guy said to come back in September also, right?
No, he said come back.
Okay.
You might be coming back in July.
Okay, I'm supporting Mr. Adams.
Okay, so then it has passed.
No, I'm sorry, I need to change my vote, because I was misunderstood. I was
See?
in the same thing as Councilwoman Gray. I thought we was gonna come back and look at it again. That's where my vote is in favor of, sorry, Mr. Adams, but I do agree with the coming back in July. So my vote would be a no.
All right, so just let me make sure. So the 3 yes votes are Mr. Adams, Ms. Gray, and Mr. Johnson. There's 3 no votes, President Shabazz, myself, and Ms. Oliver. Do I have those right?
Yes.
Yeah, Chairman, I actually, same thing as Council President. I'm going to rescind that.
Then it fails to pass, so we're
Let's
back.
just come back.
Thank you. It fails to pass, so we're back to Mr. Guy's original ordinance with the notification piece. Are there any additional comments?
Yes. Councilman Adams here, yes. His original ordinance said that the treasurer is going to go out to June 30th, 2021 on this.
No,
Okay,
sorry.
so you're giving her authorization through that period of time?
No, sir, it doesn't say that. It says June 30th, 2020.
right.
We're back to the original orders, except for the one little notification piece. Okay, listen, I'm going to call for a vote on this. We're taking a vote on ordinance number 20-019 as amended with the notification. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it passes, and I believe it's on the agenda for May 7th. The next ordinance we have is ordinance 20-010, authorize an amendment to a sublease agreement between the city and DETV Foundation. Who can speak to this?
Am I speaking to it?
Who can speak to this ordinance?
You are.
I can as chair of the CVT.
Okay,
This ordinance is to amend the contract with the third-party operator with the with the reviewing of the agreement and understanding that the operator is the operator and the operation of the CTV of the Channel 28 is a city operation, and therefore we are taking ensure that all of the utilities and major operations and ownership of the station and its operations is within our control as the city. That's what.
okay, questions? I apologize. I want to acknowledge that Councilmember Rashima Dixon had joined us during the last discussion. Mr. Guy.
Yes. As far as I can tell, this community has created, owned, and operated the television station. And that when it was put out to bid, it had already been predetermined what was going to happen. And one thing that has happened is that the conditions associated with it being put out to bid aren't being honored. So the people who bid on it, if they knew that everything was going to get paid for, then folks might have had some changes or modifications as to how they bid. In fact, there might have been more people bidding if it was understood that there was going to be what I call changes to the original agreement. So this is really problematic, especially when this was a community asset that, as far as I'm concerned, was illegally stolen and now getting ready to be funded beyond what was agreed to.
Okay.
Now, that's my general comment. I'll have some more comments by the time it's time to vote on this. But this is really a problem. And then the other thing is that somebody told me I was on channel 28 yesterday, and I wasn't on channel 28 yesterday. So I want to mention that so folks know I don't have a conflict of interest with channel 28. I haven't been on channel 28. I was on there when Lapa was on there. I've been on it before there was a Lapa.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure that that's not an issue. And if there's people on this council who voted to take this from the community, and now they're on the shows on this channel, that further is evidence of the concerns I expressed earlier. So I think we need to get a ruling or something from the law department about people who voted who now show up on this channel.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, I want to stay on this, make sure we stay on the ordinance as presented. President Shabazz?
I just want to make my clarification. The station is owned by the city. It's part of the PEG, and the managing operator is a third-party operator that's been commissioned, and we felt that after reviewing all of the legalities and current past agreements, that in order to ensure that the city had full control over the station, its equipment, and all of that goes with the station, that it had required that we had that type of control. And so that's what this ordinance is doing, is making sure that all of those things are in place, because it's a city-owned TV station that was operated by a third-party individual entity. So that's the reason why there's been changes in its mode of operation. So we're not held, that we could not control the equipment, access to the building, ensure that it's operating. We, the city, put ourselves in a position where we have control of that, and our operator is just operating the daily operations of the TV station.
Okay. Mr. Johnson, did you have a comment?
Yes, I want to echo the sentiments of Council President and supporters of this. The studio is actually in my district, and it is definitely not only a community asset, but a citywide asset, a regional asset. And I think whatever we can do, this agreement's already been agreed to. I think we need to support and make sure that the studio is in good condition and thriving. And going outside of the politics of it, we need to make sure this is a successful station, and I think this ordinance amendment goes towards that.
Okay. Mr. Guy, this is going to be the last comment, and then we'll go ahead and take a vote to see what we're going to do with this. Okay.
Okay. I guess I would first of all say the argument about whose district it is, sometimes that matters to me. In this case, the FCC put in laws historically to make sure that the voices of minority members of the community could be heard. And in Wilmington, Delaware, a long time ago, a long time ago, the minority community had a station created and operated, and it's the only voice that the minority community has had. And as part of the gentrification effort, that included closing the opportunity for the minority community to have shows and communicate. And the mayor and the president appointed all of the people that recommended that, and they had that passed. So I don't really, whose district it's in, it belongs to the people who created it. So from a civil rights perspective, the district that you represent is irrelevant. What was stolen was something was stolen from Black people who built it from nothing. So it's an anti-African American business series of events. And the object was to destroy it, to make sure that it could not be used by the people who built it and developed it. And so to that extent, this is now trying to provide money where when the people struggled who built it, there wasn't money made available.
That's not so.
Nor was this
That's not so.
in the RFP. So it's a game going on, and this is one of them ones where the FCC or the U.S. Attorney's Office need to get involved, especially when you start seeing the people voting actually on the channel. It's now a complete wrongful act. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Guy. Is there anyone from the public that wanted to make a comment? All right, not seeing any. I'll accept the motion to move ordinance 20010, authorizing amendment to a sublease agreement between the city and DETV Foundation to the full council for a vote on May 7th.
So
All right.
moved. What?
Can I hear a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second,
Okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, this will also be on the agenda for May 7th, all three of these. At this time, we're going to take a short break and we're going to get ready for our first budget hearing for the evening, and that will be the Finance Department. Thank you.